Hello, and welcome to Flosstube and Variety Show number 34. I'm Emily Williams in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and I'm glad you've chosen to join me today. Because this is Flosstube, I will show you some cross-stitch related things, projects I'm working on, and some other things today. And because it's a variety show, I'll talk about something else. So stay tuned to find out what that might be. I did not record a video last week, as my faithful viewers will have noticed, because my friend Cindy and I were at the Mid-Atlantic Quilt Festival in Hampton, Virginia, and I'll tell you more about that in the variety show portion, I guess. But first, let's talk about cross-stitch. As you may know, I work on a Blackbird Designs project the first weekend of every month, normally. But this particular weekend, this weekend that starts tomorrow, is the first weekend of March, but I'm very busy this weekend. And last weekend was the last weekend in February. I was gone, didn't do any cross-stitch. So this past week, I have been working on a Blackbird design, which is this one. I've shown this a few weeks ago. Sweet Summer, Come Again. It's this little drum and this little pin roll, and I'm working on the drum. And I made a lot of progress, and I just cannot tell you how much I'm enjoying this. Isn't that beautiful? This is the DMC conversion that's in the chart, and it's a little more vibrant than I think it's Weeks Dye Works is the threads that are called for, but I like it very much. And you can just see in the camera that pale color against this, it's called Limestone fabric. Limestone is the color. And it doesn't show up much, but I think that's gonna be okay. I'm really not worried about it. In the picture on the pattern, it doesn't show up much either. And I think that's going to be fine. It's going to be a little texture interest if you get up close to the finished item, but if you're farther away, you won't necessarily see it, but that's okay because the strawberry plant is going to be great. So I'm enjoying that. I'll keep working on that even though, well, I might work on it this weekend because it is Blackbird Design Weekend Stitch Along, BBD Weekend SAL is the hashtag if you want to see what other people are doing. So that is fun. And the other thing I have been doing a little work on is the purple sampler, which I'm taking most of my items that I'm adding to it randomly, well, not randomly, but I'll say improvisationally, from this book by Brenda, a sampler, Ultimate Sampler Motifs source book. So I'm sorry, but my table there's so many things here that I want to show you that I'm not sure what's going to happen. I'm going to try to not have anything fall on the floor. So here is where I am. I think that up through here you had seen last time. And then there's this big space you see, and then I put this border in. What I did is I measured down from here to where I wanted this next border, because this area I'm going to put something in. And, well, I'll tell you, it's going to be a tree. There'll be a tree here in the center. And then I'm going to put some little motifs and things in the white space around it. And so that's what I've been working on there. And you see I've more firmly featured that green color that's in here, and the tree will have green leaves and light purple fruits on it when it gets going. But I'm enjoying this a lot. It took me, I sort of got stopped when I realized that I was coming to the first place that I imagined was going to be a big design area. It wasn't just an alphabet or borders. And I had to sort of pause and do a lot of calculating and looking through the books, that Ultimate Sampler Motif source book, as well as other patterns I have to see exactly what I wanted to put there. And I've made my decision, I did my math. I think it will be fine. Again, improvisational, and that is how I'm doing it. So if you hear noise in the background, it's because my husband has just come in and he's going to very quietly go into the other room. Yes, he's giving me the look. All right. So that is all the cross stitch I've worked on since my video 2 weeks ago because of the quilt show. And I've spent some time getting ready for the quilt show, and then after the quilt show, I worked on the class project, which I may be able to insert a photograph of here. And if you don't see a photograph, and I am just talking about a quilt in black and white with some curved piecing that you can't see, that's because I didn't get a good photo, and I will stick it in next time. So what else do I want to show you or tell you about? So that's my word. So you've probably all noticed that. You're probably laughing because you should have a little drinking game, but I recommend maybe sips of tea instead of an adult beverage. I really do. For how many times I say the word so. I went to Dying to Stitch. Our quilt show, the Mid-Atlantic Quilt Festival, is in Hampton, Virginia, and Dying to Stitch is in Virginia Beach, which is just across the river. And it is the first time in maybe 20 years that I've been to a local needlework shop that has cross-stitch stitched on the walls. And as other Flosstube people have said, it is an entirely different experience to see the actual item stitched from seeing the picture on the pattern. So of course I bought some things. I did not buy everything I saw that I liked because I'm going to the quilt show every year, and maybe I'll go back next year and buy something else at Dying to Stitch. But I did buy a couple of things. Now, first of all, Dying to Stitch, they dye fabrics, they dye linens, and so I bought some little remnants, I would call them, of linens. This is a 40 count winter brew, and I'm not going to unwrap it because it's ravelly, and anyway, it's a little bit brownish. It's not a very big piece, it's about 5 inches, but it will be nice for some small item. Here's 40 count Nantucket brew, which is a little gray. It's a little bit gray. This is cute ribbon they put on it. So this is a little bit bigger piece. I don't know what I will do on it. So those are both 40 count, and this is a greenish color called Star Sapphire, and it's 32 count. And again, these are dyed by Dying to Stitch, so that's what these are. And I also bought 2 charts there. The models were on the wall, so what can I say? So this one is Hannah's Brownstone, and the reason I liked this is I like the house, and Cindy liked it also. I just love the disproportionate nature of some of these designs. I mean, that plant, I don't know what kind of a flower that is that's going up the side here, but it's enormous, isn't it? And the size of that bird up here in the corner, just amazing. And this is by the Scarlett house. I like that stone house. And it's not very big, really. And it does have a DMC conversion on the back, including, possibly those are intended to be blends. I'll have to do a little research on that. So anyway, that's one thing I got. Let's figure out where to put it. And I also bought this chart for Winter Rose Manor, which is by, with eye needle and thread, designed by Brenda Gervais. Now, I've seen this stitched by many people on Instagram. I just love it. And it comes with this, I mean, again, this disproportionate thing, this flowers on top of the house. These cardinals are just gorgeous. And then there's also a little pincushion or a small that's made up of that flower arrangement with one of the cardinals in it. It's basically a combination that Brenda Gervais had put together there. And I would love to stitch this. I, at the moment, don't have fabric for it, and this one does not have a DMC conversion in the chart, but I know I can figure that out. I like DMC. I like it better. Well, I haven't ever used the over-dyed cottons, so maybe I would like those. But I really like this. That house is slightly pink. The linen color is a little dark, a little bit on the dark side. So I really do like that. I'd like to stitch it. Yeah, that would be nice. So then the other thing that recently, this didn't happen at Dying to Stitch. This was actually before Dying to Stitch. I mean, before the Quilt Show weekend is when all this started percolating in my mind. So I stitch with DMC. I like DMC. It has a lot of colors. I own almost complete set of DMC from back in the day when I did a lot of cross stitch in my previous younger years. But everybody talks about silk, how much they love silk. So my friend Anne got me a spool of 103 silk in color 500 by Soie for me to try it. And I've done some research on fabric that you should use. And so people who stitch in silk, they don't like to use two threads, it seems. That is to say, they want to stitch with one thread over a linen that's small enough that one thread provides adequate coverage. So 40 count is, in most cases, that is the largest count, that is the largest size stitches that people think that 103 goes with. So I got myself a piece of 46 count Latte by XJUDesigns, which I got from Kitten Stitcher. Shakespeare's Peddler is the name of her store. And it's pale and very slightly mottled, 46 count. Which you may be thinking, wow, Emily, if you don't stitch on linen, you're leaping right into 46 count. Well, I do stitch on Lugana, which I know is not linen. It's actually an even weave. And I stitched that Salute to Abigail on 22 count Hardanger, which would be the equivalent of 44 count. So this is about that. So I think I can manage it. So anyway, I have that. Another thing that Anne gave me that is kind of an antique from her mother's sewing box, I think, is some little spools of 103 silk thread. Again, I don't know if Gutermann still makes this, but these are made by Gutermann, and this is color 800, sort of an ecru or a cream color. Sorry, I'm putting my hand in front of it. Can't you see and admire that? So I may also use some of that, although it will not show up on that particular linen, but I have 40 count linen also. So that's kind of an interesting thing that I'm looking forward to experimenting with. When I was at Dying to Stitch, I also asked whether they knew of a horizontally oriented sampler type chart that would finish at about 8 by 30 inches to go in my living room where I have a space on my wall, and they didn't know of one. They had a couple of ones sort of in that proportion on their walls, but they weren't big enough. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I may just do another improvisational design for that space, which would be fine. It's very fun. I'm enjoying working on the purple one. So that's all I want to talk about with regard to cross stitch, but I do want to talk about the quilt show and a couple of other things. So at the quilt show, there are a few things that happen at the quilt show. One is that we look at quilts. There are a lot of guilds that display quilts there. They have a challenge, a thematic challenge or a fabric challenge in their guild for the year, and then they submit their quilts to be shown at quilt shows. And so there were several guilds that had quilts. I'm hoping that while I'm talking, I'm able to put some pictures of quilts that we saw, by the way. So if you see my face instead of quilts, that's because I was lazy or ran out of time. I'll try not to talk too long in case laziness or time factor is a problem. The other thing that we do, or the other kind of quilts that are on display, are quilts made by the instructors. There's something called Instructors Row, and so you can look at quilts by instructors who are giving classes at the show and get ideas of a class, an instructor or a class that you'd like to take in a future year. So we saw some of that, and also there are the quilts that are entered by quilters, and I would say the ones that are entered for the show are professional quilters, I would say, if you can say that there's such a category, because they are not something that people did on evenings and weekends when they got home from work. These are quilts that clearly took artistic and creative and the craftsmanship to create, to actually assemble into quilts. And the quilting is amazing and the fabric choices are amazing. So that's why we go, is to see all of that. And there's also vendors. Now this year, there were not as many vendors, and some of our favorite places weren't there. Their shops didn't have a booth. So it's a little bit concerning. I'm hoping that that doesn't mean that these places went out of business. So we'll have to wait and see next year. And a lot of these places, I don't know actually the names of the shops in order to go online and find out about them. I just know that they're in the third aisle, roughly halfway down on the left in the Mid-Atlantic Quilt Festival. So interesting. Yep, take another sip of tea. But I did find some interesting patterns for quilts that I purchased. So this one's called Boomerang. This particular picture on the front is all in solids, which I like working with solids, and you can do it in other fabrics as well. This is by Jaybird Quilts. I'm leaving information in the description box about these specific things. This one called Sparrows. This is a pieced, it's a regular traditional piecing pattern, but by using coordinated fabrics, you can make this flock of birds appear. And right these days, in this early springtime here in North Carolina, we have had flocks of birds returning from wherever they go for the winter. And many are passing through to places farther north. We are not on a main migration path here, but we do get some flocks of birds. We had an amazing number of robins a couple of weeks ago. I mean, hundreds of robins everywhere, all hopping around the grass and so on. Anyway, back to quilts. And finally, there is this pattern I got called Martha Washington's Finest. And the thing that attracted me to this is that there are many interesting pieced blocks in there, as well as many interesting applique blocks. And you don't have to make the whole quilt. I will not. I imagine I will not make this whole quilt, but I will enjoy picking out some things that I do want to make and making them. So that's what that's about. And when I got back, oh yes, there's the yarn. Another thing that vendors sell at the quilt show is yarn, because many people, probably most of you, my viewers, fit into this category. You are multi-craft people. I am a multi-craft person myself. and I knit. And so I bought some yarn. Do I need yarn? Am I low on yarn here at the house? No. But I saw beautiful yarn, saw interesting patterns, had to buy it. Which reminded me and Cindy that 2 or 3 years ago we had bought this pattern for this hat. Neither of us had, at that point, ever done color work, i.e. knitting with 2 colors of yarn at the same time. So we bought yarn and we bought the pattern, and time passed. But on Sunday, after we got back from the quilt show, I said, I think I cast this on at the quilt show. I said, I'm gonna knit one of those hats. So I did. And it was fun. And I find that I enjoy color work. I find that I enjoy color work more than I enjoy double pointed needles. Thankfully, most of this was on a circular needle. But it's really nice, and the inside looks like it's supposed to, and I'm quite pleased with that. I'll do another one. The yarn that we bought, that's the start of the row. It looks a little different there. This part is better. The yarn that we bought, the amount of yarn we have, I think we can get 3 hats, 2 more. And it could switch. It could be blue as the main color and gray as this accent color also. So we'll see. Cindy, the idea was that we each were going to make a hat. So technically I've made mine. We'll see what Cindy wants to do. And then finally, the final thing I'll talk about is last time I made a video, I showed you all my pins from the quilt shows, and I made a little quilt to put them on. Now, aren't I just something? I just decided, I was on the phone with somebody and I had fabric. I was in the sewing room. I had fabric scraps, and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to cut a bunch of squares and make a little quilt. And I'm very pleased with that. It has 36 spaces. At this point, I think I have 20 pins or so. So there's plenty of room for future years of quilt shows. And if I end up going more than 16 more times, which I think about how old I'll be if I go 16 years in a row, I'll make another quilt, another little quilt, or I'll make an auxiliary quilt for something. And not all of these are quilt show pins, so I could always do something different. Take those off. So, I feel like I've been talking a mile a minute, and I've covered a billion things. I know that since I last videoed, there have been a couple of new subscribers, so welcome to you. And if you are watching this video and you're not a subscriber, I would love for you to subscribe, but I'm going to tell you that it gets you something. If you subscribe and you click the little bell, then you'll know when I've posted a video. Lately, I've been pretty regular to record on a Friday and post it by Friday evening. But there are weekends that I can't do that. And so sometimes I record and post a video on Thursday, and sometimes it's Saturday or even Sunday. I do try to do weekly video. I try to keep them between 20 and 25 minutes. And I try to make it fun for you and for me, which I do enjoy it. I enjoy keeping track for myself of what I'm working on, and I enjoy visiting with you, which I know is weird because I can't see you. Some of you I've never met. Oh well, that's how YouTube goes. But that's all for today. I hope that you have a pleasant weekend, that you enjoy your cross stitch or your quilt making or your knitting or your shopping or whatever it is that you have planned this weekend. And many blessings to you, friends.